We speak. Our words. We listen.
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 Hi there. Every Sunday, a group of autistic people get together and drop in. It's an informal group, but some of the things that people say deserve a bigger audience. So they give us permission for us to put them in an edited reel. And that's what we're here for. Today's edited reel of the conversations that we have about our own autism. Cheers. Enjoy.
Right.
Oh, wow. How are you guys?
I'm good. I've had a busy week, but it's gone well.
Yeah, all right. A busy week because I've been, substacking and stuff. But, I've also got a sick dog, so there is that as well.
What's going on with the dog then?
I don't know. She's drinking an awful lot and she's weed twice in the house over the last week or so. And I'm starting to think maybe she's got some sort of UTI. She's eating and she's about and she's still bright. It's just that, she's wanting to wee a lot, which is lovely. She did it on the living room carpet yesterday. So I'm thinking of taking her to the vets tomorrow. She's not suffering too bad. She's all right.
I think when that's happened in the past for us, what we actually did was we put down a load of paper in the kitchen on the tiles so that she could remember back to when she was a puppy and didn't feel ashamed.
Yeah, but she used to do it on the rug even back then. We never really got her particularly. She was just great. She was, after a couple of weeks, she was outside all the time anyway. She was 3 when we got her, so she's had a little bit of socialization, but it's more a case of she was so desperate she just did it, and we hadn't even realized she was that full up because she'd only just been out and all sorts. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. It was bad. I'll take her to the vets down to the vets tomorrow for a bit of a look, which will cost me a fortune.
I'm sorry. My wee dog's just had our first season, and just with the kind of changes that meant, of like changes to our routine, changes to mess in the house, things like that. I feel like it's one of these things that for other people seem to take in their stride, but for me, I'm like, oh, the whole tone of my life has shifted slightly, and this is a bit hard. But we got through it, and she seems a lot happier now. Now it's over and done with.
Yeah, when I first got Daisy, it felt like everything would, all of a sudden, it was something else I had to do and deal with. And I've had dogs in the past and cats and things, so it's not a new thing to me. But as soon as a new animal comes in, you've got to learn their personality and get through the first few months and stuff. But she's lovely now. She's really great. And I mean, we don't have seasons with her because she was spayed before we got her, but because she's a rescue. But she's a great little kid, really, generally. And I'm more a slave than her keeper, I think.
Yeah, they're really clever at getting us to look after them like we do.
I know, totally. She's a joy, but she's really in charge. And we took her to the vets about a week or 2 ago to get a kennel cough done because we put her in kennels over the holidays, so we have to get that done. So we took her down, and the vet said that I had to try and go home and get her to eat more vegetables, which is just not going to happen. She said to buy her some carrots, so I did, and she just looked at them. So, she runs it. She tells us what she wants. She's very smart.
Sweet potatoes are goodie if you mix it in with some things.
Yeah, I wasn't sure because the vet started going on about how potatoes in general should be because they're carbs, and she said, "Oh, you shouldn't give her more carbs." She's a little bit overweight, but she always has been. But she's really sedentary, and I think that's kind of just cooked into her from her past life because I've done everything to try and get her to play and be up on her feet, but she won't buy it because that's not what her life has been up to now.
She won't bite. I like it. Yeah, they suit themselves. They know what they want, a bit like ourselves.
I just have to get really used to being told off every time I go to the vets because she's eating too much of one thing and not, and not enough of the other thing. But I had it with a cat as well. I'm always getting nagged, but generally speaking, it leads to having to pay more at the vets, doesn't it? Whatever you decide to do.
It's like a license to print money. We have a PDSA up here, which I hadn't been able to use for a number of years, but got it in the past couple of years due to changes of circumstances. And, what you make up for in, the cost reductions, you have to put up with very overpopulated waiting rooms with a lot of stressed out people and dogs, but and fairly minimal service if they can get away with it. They'll take a look and just recommend something and let you go. So
yeah, I used to use the PDSA all the time. Well, the last time I used it was quite some time ago, actually. But the last thing that I did was take my hamster down to be euthanized, bless her. But one of my many menagerie animals. I've had so many bits and pieces over the years. But yeah, I had a hamster, so that I used to take it down the PDSA. It was the Blue Cross, and they were fantastic.
I feel I ought to say something about vets because my daughter's a vet, and the reality is that vets are not paid very much for their, especially for their qualifications in comparison to a middle manager. They get taken advantage of, and what's happened in the recent years in the UK is down to capitalism again. There are big companies that are controlling everything and increasing the charges and encouraging all kinds of extra things that people are morally blackmailed into. I'm sure some vets are complicit with that, but I'd like to say that in general, it's not the vet, it's the organisation.
I've quite often thought that the vet would probably be give you a much more accurate diagnosis than you get at the doctor. Like my dog had her ears swabbed, and they went through to the lab while I was there and came back to tell me what the overgrowth was in her ear. For us going to the doctor, you would just get like a generic antibiotic and sent away, even if it wasn't actually a bacterial issue.
Done. I used to work as a receptionist at a doctor's, and it's just down to time, really. I mean that each doctor gets about 10 minutes to see a patient, hear everything, and then diagnose and prescribe. So I think there's this kind of hurry up all the time with them. As for the vets, yeah, I mean I can see that there must be a huge scope for upselling every time somebody goes in there with their animal, which I can understand, And people who are kind of on the ground floor doing all the work are generally the ones that get treated, the worst.
I saw the figures on the work that my daughter did recently as a locum, and her time was charged out to the client at 4 times the rate that she was being paid.
Which is disgusting, isn't it, really?
Like, if you could sort of like temp yourself, become your own agency. There, it's totally gone. Yeah, it depends what we're selling, what our content is, I suppose, and what our product is. When you go to give yourself to an employer, that's basically what you're doing, is you're selling a service or your labour, basically. Because I'm only thinking that because recently I've been trying to work out a business plan. Business plan regarding inherent autistic skills, or a sort of alternative CV or resume of what it is we've basically been doing all our lives, what our essential skill is to a certain extent. And just going over some of my history, I kind of figured it out and sort of through it backwards and forwards and kind of worked out a little MO or a wee mission statement about what it is I'm actually trying to offer as a person. And I think, to bring it round to everybody else, it's what are we, when we often talk about, a seat at the table and stuff like that, what are we bringing to the table? What do we think we can bring to any table, as it were?
I saw a reel this week. I didn't manage to catch it out. In future, I'll try and maybe send it to Harry. But it said that it was somebody, I think, who was a autistic psychotherapist, saying that autistic people make the unconscious conscious. And that really struck me, and I enjoyed thinking about that quite a lot this week. And I was thinking about, I could see that as like I sometimes see that as a weakness of mine, that I have to, nothing runs on autopilot for me. Like everything feels like I have to give it my full, I have to give it my full attention, that monotropic experience. And so it's almost like all the things that are usually done unconsciously are there, and perhaps that might be part of. I've started thinking about what a difference that could make. Maybe that's one of the reasons that I've made people uncomfortable before, because I'm calling stuff out and I'm describing patterns that I'm seeing that are actually just meant to be left unsaid, and that could just be, like how as it was presented to me as being a bit guileless, or maybe it is this idea of making the unconscious conscious.
I agree with that. Yeah, I think the unconscious conscious. Yeah, that's kind of like what I consider as possibilities. We make people uncomfortable, I think. I've always felt I made people uncomfortable because people like security. And if you make them insecure, it's a difficult relationship. So if you're sort of making the unconscious conscious, or trying to enact possibilities where other people want certainties and definite things, then it can be quite difficult.
One of the things that I've been having to do quite a lot, and I don't know if this is connected to this unconscious conscious thing, is make sure that I'm having a really strange experience just now of having to really focus on listening to what what the teenagers in my house are saying and not paying attention to their tone. And it's something that I've heard other autistic people saying that they've needed from others as well. And I'm finding it quite quite difficult because the tone is really wild. It feels really obvious. And the face is really the faces are really in that teenage way, really exaggeratedly scornful. So I don't know, it I feel like I'm having to deliberately make the unconscious less conscious. And it's been quite a strange experience this week.
You say this week? I thought you were saying just now. Are they actually with you just now? Because that kind of relationships, well, that's like doing two things at once. So I imagine you're not doing it just now. You've been doing it recently, yeah?
Yes, recently, yeah.
Yeah, and it was, I think, today when I was doing the dishes, I usually trance out looking out the window to the backyard. And it was like I was looking at absolutely nothing, and nothing was happening, and everything was just the way it always is. And that slowed me right down, and I almost forgot myself and went off somewhere. And then this cat appeared out of nowhere. And I really liked that cat because it disrupted the scene. It just came in and it kind of triggered me. It made me react. So it brought me back to myself, which is okay. But it reminded me about what I enjoyed about the first of Lucy's Substack post, was how a random event in your life happening like that is a disruption to your status quo, can send you off in all manner of spiraling tangents that reveal things almost to you.
I see what you're saying as an advantage. I see it as part of creativity.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, but often we part creativity as like, it's not the day job, it's not serious. It's like the thing you do in your spare time. Whereas I'm kind of thinking, no, we have to own up to the fact that this is maybe all the time for us.
Sometimes when I get in one of my little like drifty off places and there's nothing that comes in and breaks it, I can sometimes find myself resenting the disturbance, and it's like and kind of looking forward to this like imaginary time in my life where I'll have this undisturbed like peace, which I don't think is going to happen really. And then when things happen, like sometimes I do feel like so grateful for like the kind of chaos and creativity of it all. And I try and keep myself well enough nourished and resourced that I'm more on the grateful for the disturbances side of things and not too burnt out.
Yeah, I felt great when that cat appeared. It was like mind expanding. It was almost like I'd become one with the whole situation out in my backyard and in my house too, the whole thing. And it was like, because there wasn't too much me involved, it was like the whole thing. And so it made me think like, wow, there's all these things going on that I probably don't even notice. But that cat was noticeable because there was nothing happening and then something happened. And it's getting you into that space. So I think this is an important thing. It's like providing that space, encouraging that space. And that was part of the modus operandi or the business plan thing that I was working on this week for myself. The conclusion was that I am the kind of person that's trying to actively encourage that kind of space where I can source things that are obscure and intriguing, that kind of disrupt normality, and then I find ways of sharing that somehow. So it kind of began with teenage kind of wild outsider living, pleasing teachers, and then becoming a source of rare media. Sorry, I'm playing with my mic.
I tend to get into these like little states where I just think back over things. I do it a lot. Because you're on your own, I'm on my own a lot. I tend to be looking back over things that I've done and working out how I dealt with things, and and trying to move that forward into my life now. And it's really like I go back in time. I time travel quite a lot and go back down my line, and find things that stick out to me from my past, and I tend to think about those and go off into little sort of like dreamlike states thinking about it. I'll forget to do all the obvious stuff because I've got my mind on something else. I can be really easily distracted.
Too much thinking time's dangerous for me. I ruminate and catastrophize, but if I'm over busy, I fall apart as well because I can't cope with. I need a sort of loose structure and be busy to cope.
I really relate to what you were saying, Lucy, about the time travel like thing and going into little trances. And Raymond, there was something you said about the kind of finding the obscure that made me think of there's a story about like the goddess Hecate, trivia in Roman times, and the reasons that she would prevail time and time again was because she would collect all the knowledge and information that everybody else just thought was trivial and would just throw away all these little kind of curious little nuggets, but actually altogether they could tell such a great big story. And so she knew how to kind of keep she's like the goddess of all these little morsels of information that can create great big leaps forward.
And I think the little
I'm
small
regretting.
incidents. Sorry, I'm thinking about all the small little nuggets and things along your timeline and things like that. I think it's really important because I think we're always. I feel like we're totally always evolving as people, and things are always changing. And for me, that's something that I think is really true. Every little step along the path, I become a slightly different person, and so it's good to kind of keep a hold on all the things you've done and how it's changed you and how you are now, because of all the little mundane things or all the little nuggets along the path that you kind of remember.
I think there's truth in what Robbie said about catastrophizing there. And he's saying that there's a difficulty in one direction, but then you're kind of between a rock and a hard place. I'm wondering how we manage to ameliorate the catastrophizing to make it a positive experience.
So one of the things that really helps me with that is grounding. And that, like, for me, I have to do that by engaging my senses and doing the 5 things I can see, like 4 that I can hear. I think it's like 3 that I can touch, 2 that I can smell, 1 that I can taste. And that tends to break me out of a loop. And when I get into a loop that's really distressing and is stopping me being able to function, which, like, for me, they do. Like, I can't do tasks or like move on. I can get really physically stuck. And grounding really helps me to kind of break myself out of it and then engage with the present.
Sorry, Raymond. Is it okay, Robbie, if I ask you a question? Because one of the wonderful things that you have that I don't have is musical talent. And I wonder whether you use playing an instrument to take you somewhere when the catastrophizing is starting, whether there's some kind of process in that helps you there.
A lot of the motivation with the music is performance. Once I've lost that, a lot of the motivation to play goes. So I have this structure where I'm involved with live streams Tuesdays and Fridays. That keeps me going, but if I haven't got something to practice for, all the motivation just disappears.
So, Robbie, what does performance mean for you?
Performance makes me feel useful, worthwhile, something I can put back into society. I haven't got a massive amount of skills, and with a toxic zero contract agency employment system in this country now, it is very unlikely I'm going to work, especially with the misuse of safeguarding within organisations. My motivation in life has always been contributing in some way. The trouble is I've never been able to do it in the financial sense. It's always been in the doing something like volunteering or playing music.
Yes, being useful and making a contribution. Often we're kind of conditioned to rely on others to validate that for us. But if you can find that for yourself, although I'm surprised you don't enjoy playing music on your own at home, but I can see why, because you're motivated towards the bigger event, the encounter with the community.
Since I've been left on mine and abandoned by side, I feel more or less invisible.
Even when you perform?
At other times, when I perform is the only time I feel actually seen.
Yeah, I used to want to be seen to a certain extent, but very quickly lost enthusiasm for it. Sometimes I wondered if I even did want to ever be seen, because I was always shy and a bit afraid of crowds and people. and reactions. But there's a bit, I think, in some personalities where, you know, you want to show off or be seen in that sense. But if you're alone, I suppose, and living on your own, you know, encounter with other people's healthy. People think they need it in some big ways, but I get out of just everyday mingling with my neighbours.
Performance is my safe place because it's predictable. I'm choosing a song. I'm with the exception of one song, I'm singing someone else's words. Whereas a normal socialising and conversation is dangerous because it's unpredictable. And I've had a lot of misinformation spread around where I live, so most people don't speak to me. And it feels like quite uncomfortable going out.
Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying there.
With the live streams, I'm learning to have to talk between the songs, and that is the hardest bit.
Make them part of the song, you know, like how you found that song or what that song means to you.
I think it's all practice as well, and I've been doing. I've had to practice a lot over the last couple of years speaking in front of other people, and that's got me to this point that I'm here just now talking with you. I think the more we get to practice, the more our confidence can grow.
I've been trying to put myself into uncomfortable spaces sometimes, I've got to say, where I'm being relied on to sort of contribute and be part of it. And I think I do it because I just feel that I need that practice. And sometimes I'll kind of go and I'll be speaking to people and I'm feeling like I'm out of body and that I'm almost outside of myself when I'm doing it. And that I can't believe I'm actually doing it and talking. I sometimes feel that here, you know, sometimes I'll be talking, I'll be thinking sort of, I'm looking at myself from above and really like, it's quite difficult to get yourself into a pattern of being able to talk out in front of strangers and things. But I have been pushing to do that just of late, just so I can just boost my confidence.
Yeah, that's very honest, Lucy. I feel that too sometimes, even here, you know, it can be quite a strange experience. I was on a late diagnosis group Teams meeting. It wasn't even Zoom, it was Teams, Microsoft Teams, middle of last week. And, you know, there was 19 people on it. And I found that quite overwhelming to be amongst so many people, even if they were just images on a computer screen. Yeah, so just a wee reflection on something that happened this week.
I often struggle with large amounts of people, particularly where you get people that are dominant, that don't want to leave a gap for someone else to speak.
I have something coming up at the end of this month where I'm actually going to meet a group of people to talk and to discuss some bits and pieces. I know it's coming up ahead of me, and I'm trying not to think of it too much, although I do have to do a little bit of work in the meantime because I'm meant to be contributing to a group and helping them to put together some literature about autism. So I know when I'm going to get, I've got it ahead of me, and it just seems like at the moment it feels all a bit chaotic in my head what I'm going to say and how I'm going to say it. You know, I'll probably be fine when I get there. Honestly, I don't like long run-ups to things. If I'm going to do something, I'd like to be told that morning I'm going to do it, and then I'll go and I'll just, you know, busk through it and then get out the other side. But having something actually fixed in the diary where I'm going to be relied upon is much more difficult.
Lucy, do you think it's preferable when, like I do, when people are wanting to pick your brains, as it were, you know, call on your expertise, like ask you questions? Often I find people don't even ask you direct questions. It's all sort of pre-planned kind of statements and behaviours, whereas I'm expecting somebody to like ask me something and then I'll respond. But But to be asked to present or, come up with stuff, it's a wee bit more difficult. So it was just that point there about you providing some information for people. I was just wondering how you felt about whether if they sent you, a brief questionnaire, and then you could just send the answers back, not to avoid meeting them, but just to see what the relationship is like in a dialogue.
Yeah, I've got an agenda for what I'm doing. So they do send an agenda of what they're going to kind of half expect from me. But when I go there, it's more like a think tank. So people are just shooting out the things that are in their heads at me. So I have to sort of think on my feet. And doing that is okay. I mean, once I get into a situation, I'll get really, really tense before I go. The last time that I met with this group, I felt really tense, didn't want to do it. I remember walking up there and all the way there, I'm kind of like almost I have an inner dialogue or trying to plan out how I'm going to cope with things, even though I don't know what's going to be coming at me really. But, you play it out and you try and make yourself feel comfortable about it. But until I'm in that space and I'm sat in front of them, it's a big thing. But when I get there, I tend to find it's okay, I don't know, it's exhausting. I will come home and just feel totally, just feeling completely mind blown.
All of this is incredibly helpful to me. I used to throw up before I went to see the bank manager. I used to have sweats all night before I had to go to do some kind of presentation or performance. And it's taken an enormous amount of time for that to become manageable, but it's still there. It's something that can be reduced and ameliorated over time, but it can't be suppressed. It has to be from a position of confidence and self-esteem in what you're saying. And I would encourage, Lucy, for you to believe that from what I've come to hear from you and what I've seen from your Substack, that all the preparation is already done in your head.
A lot of the time it is, I guess, because I monologue a lot to myself. So a lot of it is, it's not writing things down or preparing in that way. It's just all there. I try and stack it up in my brain so that I've got answers and things, I try and be as I try and go there a bit loaded with things that I could say and will say. I mean, my whole thing is that I've worked through this for a long, long time, and I used to get these panic attacks that were so bad, especially in social situations, that I found that I got to a point where I was passing out and having to sort of and I did used to pass out. I used to have to go into the loos and get behind a door, and then I would just slide down the wall and sit there for a bit. And now it's not so bad.
I recently did workshops with the expert on myself to learn how to put courses together, and I did some help with training with local organisation, and that made a real difference. I didn't initially believe I'd actually achieve it.
Thing is, Robbie, it's like, the more you learn about how to, the more you'll be able to cope. That's how I feel. It's amazing what you can pull out of the air, and it's there, and you just got to find it. So the more work you do, the better it is, and eventually you'll come to a sort of, hopefully, comfortable place.
One of my biggest problems, I was always looking at approval, when I'm sort of looking, there's not many people following me on my blog. Am I saying anything worthwhile?
I'm with you on that. I'm one of these. I do put up my blog, and I put it up and I'm really expectant. So I'm always checking the stats and seeing who's there. And if I get, sort of this many hits or whatever, then I do get a validation. And so, yeah, it's getting to that. I'm doing stuff now where I'm putting myself out deliberately to have feedback from people. So I'm working really, really hard on it. But I get this every week when I'm putting up a new Substack. I get really into it, and then I put it out there, and I don't want to be disappointed. I want to make sure the things I'm saying are relevant and useful.
That starts to worry me, because I think that way madness lies for us. That is how we end up burning ourselves out and not being able to sustain things. I think if you are starting to realize that, it's time to ease back. So maybe the things that we're doing together, we should definitely ease back on.
Yeah, I don't want to take away any hope from anyone, because everything's worth doing. It's just sometimes the spaces we're in might not be able to provide for us what we want. And what we want is kind of feedback, validation. We want connection. I feel in my case, it's all about connection. Connection even with myself, my desires and my needs, and then taking that out into other connections. Although I do know I'm connected all the time anyway. But so I'm the one that's causing the separation, as it were. But to seek the validation and the approval, a lot of the online spaces from many, many years of using them are not the perfect places for gaining that. Although, like anything, they can be used for, it's difficult to explain this. You can use it subversively. You can use it for your own ends. You can gain what you want from it if your aim is achievable and reasonable. But a lot of these places are sometimes like howling in the wind. And so making little small groups within the larger group is possibly the best way of doing it, connecting up with kind of like minds, attaching yourself to those things and communicating within that.
There's something about these spaces, these social media spaces, that are immediate and then they disappear because nobody looks back. It's why I rejected them for having any kind of influence. It's why I wanted to make things that could be recorded and then found again, to actually put the information out there for people that will seek it. I do feel that what we are doing has reached some people that will have some kind of effect. It's not enormous and huge, but it's there, and it can always be revived and brought back. And that's what I will do. I will make sure every recording gets rebought through so that they cannot ignore us.
The whole start of my blog was because I didn't want anyone else to experience what I had when I lost my dad, because the services were absolutely useless. They were just putting out generic support, and they didn't seem to care if it harmed. They do quite well at making money out of people that have got savings, because they put a £7.50 a week charge on top. And so there's no benefits to them because they don't listen. And in the end, I told them to go away and got support directly, because getting support directly means they're working toward outcomes I want, rather than ones imposed upon me. And I just don't want that, because I need a purpose now my parents are gone. I don't want to just be sitting in a flat waiting for time to go.
Yeah, I know this might sound a bit easy, Robbie, but you are your own purpose. Looking after yourself and fulfilling your joy, the things that make you be you, they're the important things. You said you're the blog. Is that different from, say, you being on Facebook? Is it somewhere separate that we can look up?
It is my Facebook profile. I couldn't find out any way of doing it separate. And the separate blog I had, I just gave up on because no one was looking at it.
Yeah, social media is a bit like that. They've colonized all the spaces for communication. It's a bit like if you want to go and buy yourself something special, you have to use certain shops because they've taken over all the space. It's very difficult to find spaces that are not part of the social media thing. So unless, say, you get that confidence in yourself and what you want and you can just go out. But I hear you when you say that within your own community that you've had your wee run-ins.
My other news, I don't mean to be really flippant after some of the serious things we've talked about, but I got some new trousers this week and I feel really, really pleased with them. And now I want to buy the same kind of trousers but in lots of different colours. They're not joggers, they're like a nice brush cotton, and they've got like they're rust coloured. My favourite colour is rust, and they've got like some kind of check, and they've got a really, really comfy soft elastic waist, and it feels like joggers, but I feel like they're a tiny little upgrade, and I'm just dead pleased with them. And because normally, like, I wear clothes until they fall apart, like I can't sell or donate my clothes when I'm done with them because they're dead. Same with my shoes, like they're replaced because they're like unmendable, done. Yeah, so I always find it quite a big deal trying to find something new. It is. It is quite autistic.
Rust is a great colour. Rust never sleeps. But yeah, jeggers was a word I heard in a TV show about this middle-aged woman who ran away from her man to go to the woods and kind of explore herself. And she met Paul Whitehouse there, who was playing this character in this local village who would always shout, "Jeggers!" And I thought it was some kind of term, some English term for a pair of apparel, a pair of trouser. But clothing is a subject we will need to discuss one day because it is dead important. I'm beginning to be very fond of the stretchy, baggy, loose fit thing now.
I bought myself a new pair of trousers today, actually, on the same token. We went out shopping down at the big Tesco's and they had a sale on, and I've got myself a pair of these cargo pants with loads of pockets. I love things with loads of pockets. That's me. I don't know why. My bag has got loads of pockets in it and my clothes have got loads of pockets in it. And I like that, and I don't know why. But yeah, I'm thinking of going back and seeing if I know they had some green ones and I was tempted, and they're only cheap, £7.
Lucky you, your Tesco still sells clothes. Our one stopped doing that. F&F, were they? Or something. Next took over ours.
Yeah, F&F. And I think it's F&F anyway, but it's like a superstore. They do everything in there. It's everything. It's an everything shop. We've got lots of everything shops around here. I get excited by going into shops and just browsing through things. I'm buying things that I don't necessarily need a lot of the time, but yeah, it's like I've got pockets for everything on everything. My bag has kind of got a place for my cards and a place for this. It's like organisation, really. My clothing. I like to. Everything is so organised. And is the term you're thinking about, Raymond? What they called jeggings?
That's what they are. Jeggings, leggings, and joggers. A combination of the two. Yeah, and you can't
Jeggings
rely
are a mix
on
between jeans.
Oh, jeans and leggings, right? See, you can't rely on second-hand or depend on second-hand for your clothing needs, although when it does pay off, it's like serendipity.
I think Raymond, there's a gendered thing goes on with secondhand clothes. I haven't bought anything new for many, many years, and I always am able to find like what I'm looking for. And when I've tried to look for men's secondhand clothes, like for my son, it's just it's an absolute no go. There's so little selection available in comparison.
You have to haunt the posh areas.
I don't.
I used to work in a charity shop, and you could find nice small men's clothes, but the bigger stuff was just not available because I think it gets to the point the men don't follow the fashion as much. But I'm now much more into costume stuff, so it does make a lot of difference.
I started learning how to sew again this year, and I got to do like a dressmaking course with our adult learning and community skills. And it's really I was imagining being able to kind of make myself clothes that were kind of inspired by like fae or elves, pixies maybe.
I'm smirking a wee bit here because that was one of the first things I ever heard when I was looking into autism, was that like certain people wear pixie ears and actually body modify in order to look like strange beings.
One of my problems when I move was finding a place for my clothes because I'm into sort of Western costume, medieval costume. And it's one of my ways to express myself. And I've got to the point I don't care what people think.
Hooray to that.
Robbie, do you do country and western music at all? Because we used to have a bunch of characters up here who were like gunslingers and that.
Yeah, I do a bit of country and western music. I'm into anything. The bigger part of the interest came off with a German band called D'Artagnan that dress as musketeers, and that's where it really kicked off, and it got expensive. And the nightmare is buying stuff online and getting the sizes right.
Oh yeah, there's a kind of medieval thing going on in the UK, or has been for a decade or two now.
Most recently it was getting into Vikings, and I got a costume made of Ragnar. Only problem was that I've got to get it adjusted because I didn't get the sizes quite right.
Did you know that to be struck by the pixies was used to be called being pixelated? I think it's really funny now with our digital like pixels and digital elves.
One of my advantages with going out of costume is it sometimes got people talking to me.
Yeah, but it also gets the right people to talk to you as well, Robbie. Do you know my brother-in-law? He's a Viking, and he does reenactments in various different eras, battles and all kinds of stuff. Mark Brown.
No, I don't.
It ain't that small a world.
Even in the Viking world.
Pixelated, oh great. Fragmented by a word.
When I manage to get lifts to my open mics and music jams, I will go all dressed up.
Robbie, is your bike a motorbike or a push bike?
It's a motorbike. I wouldn't be able to do the distance I do on a push bike. I go up to about around an hour's journey away.
Cool.
So I managed to find a little traveller guitar on Amazon that I could take on the back of the bike easily, and I've now bought the bass version to learn.
Robbie the Biking Viking.
It's a bit better than the peddling peddler.
What a lot of these people providing services for autistic people and people with mental health to go don't seem to get is you do actually need to be interested in what you're doing. And I go out to all these open mics. I have no problem being involved gets me in with people. Whereas if I go in a pub not doing anything, I just sit on my own.
Yeah, society can be a bit alienating at the times. Some of us don't even know what we're interested in or want, or in my case, got a wee bit confused about what I was really interested and wanted.
All the services seem to be pretty rigid. It's for this age group, for that diagnosis, and I don't seem to get that people are different. And none of the mental health services or autism seem to want to provide anything music related. It's always art, board games, general conversation.
Very briefly, because time's creeping up on us, we have some drop-in recording studios here that some autistic friends of mine use and feel comfortable about, because they're just hangouts, they're just comfortable little spaces, they're not too busy. You can book them as well. So, and I think they're kind of free, which is kind of nice. Maybe some contribution.
Okay, guys, I'm going to stop the recording. Can I ask if everybody's okay that's taken part today to have their voices put in, or is there anybody I need to remove the track from?
Oh, cool.
Cool as ever.
I'm grand.
I'm happy to be included.
Yay! Happy to be included. Like it.
Well, on that beautiful note, I'll just say next time I'll just ask if anybody wants to be excluded. Let's look forward now. We've got the 555 with Harry coming up, and I've looked at the Facebook, so there's a lot in there. Everyone's got the links, yeah?
Well, it's 5:44 now, so our drop-in hour is finished, and thank you to all the people who have texted, and also to the people who have put their voices to this, that are going to allow us to put some of those words out into the podcast. If you join us here at the 444, your voice isn't recorded, your text isn't recorded, but the people here have given permission so that it's an example for others. See you again, always reliably, Sunday, 4:44 p.m. Cheers, guys.